Now let's take you to Paris because a French policeman has now been charged and remanded in custody following the killing of a 17-year-old boy named as Nahel, who was shot dead by an officer on Tuesday. Thousands of people have been marching through the streets of the Paris suburb of Nanterre to remember the teenager. Well, the march was led by Nahel's mother, Munya. She saluted the crowds from an open-top truck. The boy's killing during a traffic stop provoked riots in Paris and other cities across France. Well, this was the scene in the French capital last night. Rioters clashed with police as cars were overturned and set alight. On Tuesday, a video captured the police officer pointing his gun at the driver before pulling the trigger at point-blank range. He died shortly afterwards. Well, the French government has announced 40,000 police officers are being deployed across the country tonight. At a crisis meeting with senior ministers, President Emmanuel Macron described the violence of the past 2 nights as unjustifiable.
The last few hours have been marked by scenes of violence against police stations, schools, town halls, and therefore basically against all institutions and the Republic. And this is absolutely unjustifiable. And I want to thank all those who work to protect these institutions and restore calm. So for me, the next few hours must be a time for recollection and respect.
Well, one of the people who attended today's march was Mohamed Jacoubi, a neighbour of Nahel's family. He spoke about his memories of the 17-year-old.
He is a young man. He's very kind. He's not evil or a hooligan. What the media are saying is not true. His mum raised him well. His grandmother we know here around the neighbourhood. She is kind and helpful. She loves everyone. The young man left us for nothing.
Well, in the last few hours, police and protesters have clashed at the march, and demonstrators in Nanterre threw projectiles and police responded with tear gas. Well, my colleague Rajini Vaidyanathan is there for us now. Rajini, bring us up to date on what the situation is now in and around that area of Paris.
Well, the smell of smoke is hanging in the air and it's filling our throats here, and that's because in some parts of Nanterre, after that march ended, people started setting things alight. So there's some tyres that have been set alight not too far from where we are. In the main, things were peaceful in that march, which attracted more than 6,000 people. You may be able to see in the distance now that there are more and more police officers who are arriving to this area in anticipation of another possible evening of unrest. Now, we've been speaking to some of the people who attended that march earlier. A real sense of a lack of trust between people here and the police. People say this isn't something new, but they say that what's happened to Nahel has just kind of opened up the issues that they say that they face. And this is what one man told me earlier.
Pourquoi tirer sur un enfant innocent qui commence à peine sa vie, qui commence à peine ses projets, en plus l'unique enfant de sa maman. Mais où va ce monde? Où va la France? Sans l'Afrique, il n'y aurait pas cette France qui brille aujourd'hui. Et maintenant, les mêmes petits-fils de ces gens qui ont aidé la France ne peuvent plus vivre en paix en France. Mais où va ce monde?
Well, it was actually, that wasn't the clip of the man that I spoke to. That was one of the women I spoke to. Apologies, there was no translation on that. But the mood amongst most people I spoke to was frustration, as I was saying, a deep feeling that there is no trust and that trust has been broken. And so people were saying that they wanted justice for Nahel. They also said that if there weren't cameras recording what happened, maybe the problems and the issues wouldn't have been brought to the spotlight in the way that they have. And of course, that is a similar refrain from what we heard, of course, in the United States, when the protests happened in the wake of the death of George Floyd. Now, people here haven't necessarily made those comparisons, but there is a sense that they need to make sure that they do what they can so that this sort of thing doesn't happen again. So I spoke to one man here who was wearing a body cam around his neck, a GoPro, And he said, I'm wearing that, and I wore that today in case something bad happened to me, and then I'd have it recorded. So that really is the sense of the trust that's been broken. Of course, as you were saying, Mariam, charges now have been laid against the officer who shot Nahel, and hopefully that will, make some people feel that, action is being taken. Of course, there will be a trial, and he will be able to make his case as well. But some people have said that the authorities have been quick to condemn this, and that has been something that some people have appreciated, although they say that words from politicians don't necessarily change much. And I'm just moving aside because you can see there more emergency vehicles arriving here, and that's really been the scene all day. And I should just say, Mariam, where we are in Nanterre, it's not too far from the centre of Paris, and we've been walking around this area today, and you can see the damage and destruction from last night's unrest. Post office window not too far from here completely smashed. There's lots of glass on the floor. Lots of office buildings in the distance have graffiti written on them, and it's all the same feeling and sentiment here. They are demanding justice for Nahel, and they believe that this is the only way, some of them, for their concerns to be heard. But most people here that we've spoken to hope that it isn't another night of violence, but the police here are turning up in larger numbers, bracing themselves for any possibility.
Regini, thank you very much indeed. And just to update viewers at home on the latest, we've been hearing that there is a curfew that's been announced, but it's just in a small a suburb of Paris. It's the town of Clamart in southwest of Paris. It has brought in a curfew apparently from 9 p.m. this evening until 6 a.m. on Monday. This is a little commune in the southwestern suburb of Paris, about 8.7 kilometres or 5.5 miles, more or less, to the very centre of Paris. And that town has brought in a curfew for its residents. One wonders whether other parts of the city may bring in similar, declarations, similar curfews, given the amount of unrest that we've seen over the past few hours. But more, of course, on that story here on BBC News.